Welcome to Aligned AF, real talk for evolving souls with Yahweh Kent. Join Yahweh for honest conversations on spiritual growth, the messiness of life, and how to move through it all at a higher frequency. So grab a cup of tea and let's sail in. This is Aligned AF, and here's Yahweh.
Welcome back. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Aligned AF, Real Talk for the Evolving Soul. And I am Yahweh. So good to have you back. And if this is your first episode, there's 3 more to listen to, but feel free to hang out. There is no linear message to this podcast. Each week has a different subject, and you can jump in and jump around pretty much as you wish, whatever resonates with you. So today we're going to be talking about sacred spaces at home and creating a space that nurtures your soul. So we have to remember that every day we're kind of walking through life and picking up energy, whether it's in conversations or related to stress or world events, watching the news. God forbid you're getting your news from social media, because then it's probably much worse. Or even our own thoughts, our own random monkey mind can kind of screw up our role from time to time. And even when we're not consciously aware of it, our environment will affect our energy levels and our mental clarity. So sacred spaces work kind of like energetic checkpoints. So kind of like playing a video game, So that's what having that sacred space will do for you. The power of physical space in your spiritual practice is really, really important. Spaces hold energy. Everything is atoms, everything's electrons, everything's flying around out there, and everything holds energy in some way. Think about a time that you may have walked into a room and instantly felt off. You maybe even couldn't identify why. And you just felt like uncomfortable. You didn't want to be there. It kind of gave you a speed bump in your day, Picture the difference between walking into a Chuck E. Cheese and walking into like a metaphysical shop or a yoga studio. And you'll realize what I mean by spaces holding energy. And also conversations that we have with people throughout the day. Everybody has their own energy. Everybody's throwing off their own vibe. And you could be in a great space and somebody comes up to talk to you and they've had a crappy day. They want to complain about something. They are just looking at things in a very negative light, a lot of shadow connected to them. And that energy can kind of siphon off and kind of float around in our own energy fields for a little while. And if we're not careful, if we're not practicing good energetic hygiene, we can be affected by that as well. Finding that safe space, finding that that space that's sacred to you, that gives you some spiritual balance, it's a lot more than just meditations and rituals. Some people think of sacred space like an altar or a room full of crystals, or a room maybe for deep meditation. We have a meditation room at home where we have, currently I'm sharing it as an office, but we have a crystal bed to lie on, and we have, Buddha pictures and prayer flags and a tapestry of Metatron cube. And then we have one of our echoes in the house, continually playing meditation music. So if any of us needs a break, any of us needs to check out, any of us needs to kind of realign, and that's me, my wife, or Orion, we say, I'm going to go in the meditation room, or I'm going to go lay on the crystal bed for a little while. And that's a really good sacred space for all of us in the house. Um, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an entire room. It just has to have the intention of holding space for you. It could be a desk, it could be a cozy chair, it could be a special blanket that makes you feel good. They all become a part of your sacred environment. For me, it's also a place where I go when I need clarity or creativity or just to reconnect with myself. And it's not always the meditation room. I have my own space in the basement where at times I just need to get away. And that's far enough where I can just go be by myself for a while. Other times I go out back and I just sit on the deck in the sun and enjoy that for a little while. There's lots of ways of finding that sacred space for yourself. You hear paper flying, it's because I have my bullet points written down. And if you're watching me, hey, this is real. This is what it is. I don't have a photographic memory and I don't have a teleprompter. So we just get through it and it's okay. A few minutes ago, I mentioned energetic clutter, and that may be a new term to some of you. So I just want to talk about that real quick. Basically, it's the accumulation of unresolved emotions, thoughts, attachments, or even external influences that create stagnation in your energy field. So, like emotional residue would be like old wounds, maybe grief that you haven't processed yet, or maybe some form of resentment against somebody or against something you did. Mental overload is a part of that. Having like constant negative thoughts that go in a loop, having limited beliefs about something, or just too much information in your head. Environmental energy is important because there can be draining people around you, there can be cluttered spaces around you, and it just all feels like chaos. Think about the last time you completely like gutted a room that was a disaster, was a mess, and you gutted it and you rearranged and you purged, you got rid of some stuff, shifted the whole energy of the place. And when you walk into that room afterwards, how good it feels, you know? So that is the same as your internal room, your internal mind. You have to make sure that that's continually cared for and cleared. Then there's also spiritual interference, different attachments we may have spiritually, energy that no longer serves us, things that we've gone through throughout our lives that for some reason we're holding on to and kind of reliving the emotions from time to time. They pop up, they feel real, they are real, but they feel as intense as the first time you felt them. And they're still kind of hanging around. So you've got some spiritual interference there as well. So that's energetic clutter. What types of things do you think you would need for a sacred space? And this is talking about like a physical space. Okay. So if you have an entire room that you can dedicate to this, that's great. Start with it empty. Just completely gut it. Nothing on the walls, nothing on the floor. Just get it all out of there. And then slowly, one item at a time, bring things back into that space and let the item tell you where it needs to be. If you pay attention, your objects will tell you where they go. You'll set one down, it doesn't feel right, you'll move it. I mean, how many times have you moved a painting on the wall? You think logically, you think, oh, it's crooked, it's off balance, needs to be centered over the sofa, things like that. But there are spiritual elements and energetic elements to that as well, where it's just not jiving in a certain spot. And so you kind of relocate it until it feels right. You do the same thing in your sacred space. You may have a collection of spiritual books that you love to read, and you may find a new way of displaying them. Sometimes stacked on the floor in the corner is okay. Other times you want a new bookcase, and that's okay too. You can make it look like this fake backdrop that I've got here with funky books that I've never read. Um, or you can just clear it out, as much as possible. Excuse me. It's good tea. Um, really, what it is it's about your intention when you're creating this space. The foundation of any sacred space is not what's in it, it's the intention that you infuse into it. So before adding everything, I told you, pay attention, make sure it actually wants to be in that space. Now, some examples of different types of space that you can have, depending on your need, would be like if you're looking for a grounding space, a place where you can go and find balance and sort of clear some stuff. You're going to want earthy colors. You're going to want stones of some kind. Black tourmaline is a good one. Smoky quartz is a good one. I actually have a smoky quartz, and for those of you that are watching on video, I can show it to you. But I've carried a smoky quartz, which is about the size of my thumb, and the top of it's black, and it sort of fades to gray near the bottom. And I've carried this for years in my pocket. I take it pretty much the same way I would take my keys when I leave the house. And that smoky quartz is in my pocket, and that helps me mentally. It helps me clear negative energies throughout the day. Smoky quartz is great for that. And it also gives me kind of a fidget stone to have in my pocket, which is nice when you're out in the quote real world. So if you have the ability to carry something in a pocket, it doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be fancy, it doesn't need to be some deep metaphysical meaning or anything like that. It can be a rock, it can be a stone, it can be a coin, it can be a token of some kind, pretty much anything, as long as it means something to you. So that's, for grounding space. If you're looking for a space for creativity, then you're going to want it to be more open. You're going to want it to be uncluttered, though some of my artist friends would say otherwise, because I've seen some of their spaces, and to me they're cluttered chaos. To them, they're perfect. They know where everything is, and that's their good spot. That's where the energy is just right, and that's great. Typically, for those of us that aren't constantly painting or sculpting or something like that, an uncluttered space for creativity tends to be better. Some symbols of inspiration, whether it be, a picture of Buddha or some nice crystals or anything like that. You want to have some brighter colors when you're looking for creativity. And then you want kind of uplifting scents like citrus or rosemary. And you can do that with essential oils. You can do that with incense. If you're in a small room, be careful with the incense because the smoke can kind of throw you off. And if you're sitting there trying to be at one with yourself or trying to meditate and the smoke is causing you to cough, that's not going to do you any good. Typically, what I do with the meditation room, since it's a closed space, is I will light an incense, walk through the room, and then go put the incense in the living room where it's a wide open space and the rest of the house can enjoy it. But I've got the essence of the incense without the overpowering smell. You want to be careful with too much incense, too much essential oil, because strong smells can be very distracting and very overwhelming. And then if you're looking for just kind of a peaceful restoration kind of space, you want to make sure you've got soft lighting. You want to make sure you've got comfortable textures in the room, not a lot of sharp corners or hard edges. You want calming like blues and lavenders will really help. And if you don't like blue and purple, some nice pale greens are always nice. But it's really about just kind of what feels peaceful for you. And then you got to start decluttering and clearing energy. Okay. So physical clutter will lead to energetic clutter. Now I mentioned that briefly before. Um, you go into a shop now, and I'm not bad mouthing any stores here, but let's say, I mentioned Chuck E. Cheese and I mentioned going into a yoga studio. Well, let's say that you walk into, I don't know, like a Dollar Tree or a Dollar General, and it's pretty much floor to ceiling all the way back. Every corner is packed with stuff, and it doesn't always feel like it makes sense when you're looking for something, and it feels chaotic. And that's just the nature of the store. It's not there for aesthetics. It's not there to have people come in and browse around like they're walking through a labyrinth. It's there to come in, pay $1 for something, and get the hell out because we have other customers, and that's fine. It serves its purpose. But again, that can affect you and kind of stir up your energetic clutter as well. So, what I recommend when you're working on your space at home, just the simple act of um, of cleaning up that space, of putting yourself fully into it in the moment, of really doing some conscious rearranging, will in itself add to the release of clutter in your energy field. Um, when you're working on your personal space, open some windows, let some fresh air in. Do an energetic clearing of the space. Smoke cleansing like sage, Palo Santo, cedar, or non-smoke clearings like essential oils and things like that work really well. Just like I said, don't overpower the room. Just walk through and walk out with it. You can do sound clearing using crystal bowls or chimes. You can even do something. I've seen people clap in corners. You walk into a room and you go to each corner and you do some clapping, and that helps to clear the energy levels in that room too. And then visualization, where you imagine a white light kind of sweeping through the room and giving it a good clearing. Light clearing, like using a candle throughout the room, getting it into every corner of the room, and kind of what you do is you uncover the shadows that are in there. Now, physically, you've got shadows that you see, and whether you see them or not, they're there. As long as there's light, there's going to be a shadow. If there's one object, somehow there will be a shadow. And shadows are not bad. I'm not talking about the negative connotation of shadows like shadow work or dark shadows, things like that. But I'm talking because shadows are important in life. There is a lot of learning in shadows. And quite honestly, there's a lot of beauty in shadows. An example, Alora and I were leading a retreat a few years ago, and the place that we chose to go to had this beautiful spot on a meadow top that they had like an old altar up there. And it just was a great space to do outdoor yoga and to meditate and to just sit and talk. And we were up there one early evening, and we decided we were going to stay there to sunset. Now, we had a wide open sky, both sunrises and sunsets from that sky, from that spot. And so as the sun started setting, there were a few clouds floating around. And as the sun started to set, this beautiful sunburst kind of burst from the clouds. and where the light didn't get through, you got these beautiful, grayish lines coming up with light all around them. And we sat and watched this change over and over and over again for over an hour. And each time we thought it was almost done, another little sunburst would pop through. And something that really struck me that I actually kind of worked into a lesson the next day was not to be afraid of the shadows, because without the shadows, we would never have experienced such a beautiful sunset the night before. Our shadows are there for a reason. We don't have to live in them. And some of the harsh ones we can tone down, but they're not something to be afraid of. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're going forward as well. Sensory elements when you're activating a space. You want to use your five senses to the best of your ability. Each sense needs to kind of be present in your sacred space. Sight, well, we mentioned sacred symbols. You can have meaningful art on the wall, candles, plants, things like that. The sense of smell, you can have essential oils, incense, fresh cut flowers is always nice. Any scent that connects directly to a memory or an emotion is also nice. Then sound, light music playing in the background. Try not to have anything too upbeat, too modern. I always, my go to is just meditation music and just let it play random. But ambient sounds are really nice too, because you don't want, if you're like, let's say you're going to go into your space and you're going to meditate for 30 minutes. What you don't want is a recognizable pattern that takes you away from your purpose for being there. So if you're listening to a song, an actual written song that has a body and a chorus and all that, a discernible melody, what you'll find is, even if you've never heard it before, you will begin to recognize it, and then your brain just starts following the music. And if all your purpose was to go in and listen to some nice music, that's fantastic. But if you're in there to meditate, to actually consciously be able to ground yourself, to get some balance, to stabilize things, then a discernible melody can be distracting. I prefer to use an ambient channel on the Echo Dot. You can just say play ambient music or ambient sounds, and then you can choose from any number of things. My son goes to sleep with the sound of the ocean every single night. I actually use what's the word? I'm at a loss right now. Binaural beats. That's what I do. So I'll go on the ambient station and I will ask for binaural beats. And binaural beats are great because they're almost always at a single frequency range, and there's no discernible tone or melody to them. They just play. And those are fantastic for meditating and for just kind of allowing yourself to check out of the real world, the physical world. I don't like calling it the real world because, quite honestly, it's more illusion than anything else. But to check out of the physical world and truly get into the energetic, spiritual side of yourself. When we're talking about sensory elements, the other thing you want to try to make sure that you've included the five senses, but you also want to include the elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So for earth, you want to make sure you have at least one plant, if not a few plants, in the space with you. You can also have one of those Zen gardens where it's just a box of sand with a stone and then a little tiny rake, and you can make designs in it. For air, you want to possibly have a window open unless there's a lot of traffic noise in your area, or even a ceiling fan that's on a very light flutter. Fire, candles are always nice. Soft lighting if you don't want to do candles. And then water. Water is important. Have a water feature. Only drink water when you're in this room. Really what it comes down to as far as space is concerned is making it personal. There's no right or wrong way to create a sacred space. Just do what really feels sacred to you, and that's the key. Figure out what your definition of sacred may be, and then own that and do what feels sacred for you. Have some objects that have personal meaning to you, maybe a passed down piece of jewelry, a shell from a meaningful trip to the beach, or a handwritten note that kind of lifts your spirits. Like I said, I have the stone that I carry with me, but when I'm in my personal space, I have this really cool kind of adult fidget. Now, those of you that are watching the video will see this in my hand, but I'll describe it anyway for those that are just listening. What I have is a brass cube. It's got rounded corners on it. It is a regular six-sided cube. What's interesting about it, first of all, it's incredibly heavy. This thing is probably a couple of pounds, 2.5, maybe 3 pounds. It's surprisingly heavy for its size. It's about 1.25 1.5 inches square. The cool thing about it is it's got every single face. Hear that sound? Every single face has a spinning disc, and it's ball bearings on the inside. And the balance of this thing is so perfect that even with gravity affecting it or friction affecting it, it will spin for a really long time and really peacefully. I like holding it in my hands. The weight of it is very comforting. But mostly what I do is I set it on my desktop and I give it a good hard spin, and then I just listen to it. I'm going to have you listen to this for a minute. Now, if you're driving, don't close your eyes and get lost in it, okay? Listen to it later or pull over or something. But if you're in your room or in your house or someplace that you can, close your eyes and just listen for a minute. This is what I use, okay? Hold on. All right, so that'll go. I've timed it. That will continue to spin for about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And what I do is I'll give it a spin. Quite often I'll stare at it, but I'll mostly just listen to that sound. And as that sound starts to change, as it noticeably slows its rotation, then I physically, emotionally, spiritually am releasing whatever I need to release so that I can find some balance or prepare for a podcast episode or get ready to write up notes for my next episode or do some blogging or do some channeling, anything like that. I use this to kind of center myself. Find something that works for you. So, what do you do if you don't have physical space like some of us do? What do? You don't have a separate room. Every room is occupied in your house. You don't feel necessarily like there's any space that's just yours. And that can be challenging. And I've lived that. One of the requirements for Alara and I going forward was each of us being able to have our own space. Because in the last apartment that we lived, literally no space of that I was in was sacred. We shared a bedroom. I slept on the couch a lot. little man had his room. We had a bathroom upstairs and a half bath downstairs, a living room, a kitchen, and dining area. And that was pretty much it. And we, the three of us lived there, but I never really had an opportunity to be by myself if I needed to. And so one of the requirements for us when we moved was we have to have at least three bedrooms so that everybody can have their own space. And we ended up just hitting the jackpot with our house because not only do we have three bedrooms, but we also have a finished basement. And then, being that we only needed two other bedrooms, we were able to create a meditation room, which was fantastic. That was not a deal breaker for us, but it was certainly a bonus when we had the opportunity to do that. But we don't always have that opportunity. So what do we do when we don't have the space to create something that's ideal? Not everyone does, and that's fine. But sacred space doesn't require square footage, okay? Some ideas for sacred space around the house in a limited area. You can have a single shelf with a candle or a crystal on it of some kind. You can make your journal your sacred space. It becomes your little privacy area where you do some journaling. I recommend journaling. I'm not good at it. I will admittedly start it and then after a couple of weeks forget. And then it could be months before I get back to it. But I know how good it is for you. So in a situation like this, do as I say, not as I do, because it will benefit you. You could have a windowsill that has like a meaningful object on it, something that looks outside, not necessarily to street traffic, but maybe to a tree or the distance. You could have even something as simple as a box that you put special items in, and these items you bring out when you need to find some space. If you can, in any way, try to get a chair of some kind or a seat of some kind into your room. Maybe your room isn't big enough to hold a whole chair, but there's almost always room to put a meditation poof. They're not that big. They're, less than a foot tall, and they're probably about, 15 to 18 inches wide. And they can tuck under a bed when they're not in use, but they're comfortable to sit on. You put your back up against a wall and find your space to meditate. And then get your family's buy-in. Everybody needs to be on the page of helping each other stay emotionally and physically healthy. So when you need 20 minutes, please, please, please know it's okay to ask for that time. There is nothing more important than your emotional and spiritual well-being. And you finding balance, finding peace, finding a way to process is only going to benefit the rest of your family. And make sure that you're offering them that same option. The kids won't always take it. Meditating, my little guy, he's going to be 8 years old tomorrow, and he grew up with us as parents. So meditation was an everyday thing. He uses the crystal bed on his own. He'll say, I'm overstimulated, I need to lay on the bed, or I'm feeling emotional, I'm going to go in the crystal room. So he will take care of himself in that way. But God forbid you ask him to meditate. Sit still and be quiet for 10 or 15 minutes. No, thank you. And that's fine. He's a kid. I get it. We still continue to try. And sometimes we can get him to sit for 2-3 minutes, and that's okay. That's enough. But just make sure you find that time for yourself, and make sure your family gives you that gift, because you really need it. And so do they. So do they. When you're living in tight shared spaces, you have to have energetic boundaries. Living with a family or roommates or partners, Your sacred space can be anything, like we've already talked about, a specific chair. It could be a certain time of day when you claim the space. Mornings before anybody wakes up usually works. It's not always fun to get up a little bit earlier, but if you're getting up to meditate and sit by yourself for a little while and kind of prepare for the day, it really does benefit you. And losing 15 to 20 minutes of sleep compared to what you had before, you're going to be surprised at how much better you feel by doing that. And it could be evenings, before bed. Try not to lay down because you'll end up falling asleep, like I often do. And to use when you're using your space and there's others around, use noise canceling headphones if you can. That way you kind of create your auditory space as well. Noise canceling headphones aren't that expensive anymore. And typically they come with Bluetooth, so you can plug it into, an app on your phone, and all you're going to hear is what's in those headphones. And that'll be nice for 15 or 20 minutes. Longer if you can do it. And while this all could still be challenging for you, I don't pretend to know what's going on in your house, excuse me. So it could be challenging for you to even get that kind of space. Remember that your body is your first sacred space. So treat your body like the sacred space that it is. Practice breath work. Breath work is huge. And so there's so much redeeming value to breath work. If you're not familiar with it, it's not just breathing, okay? It's so much more than that. And I'm not a breath work practitioner, so I'm not even going to pretend to explain it all to you. But if you reach out on social media or on the internet, you will find breathwork information and people in your area that maybe facilitate classes. Sometimes they're live, sometimes they're virtual, but either way, they will help you. Meditation is key. If you're not meditating regularly, develop a habit. Give yourself that commitment. I am going to meditate. If you meditate for 5 minutes, it's better than what you did yesterday when you didn't meditate at all. Eventually, you want to try to get up to 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a time, possibly even an hour. Maybe it's your birthday. But even 5 minutes of meditation can help you kind of reset and kind of step forward with a little bit more balance and a little more stability in your life. Treat your body as well as you can, and that includes what you're putting into it. I love a good oatmeal cookie as much as the next guy, and we've got my son's birthday tomorrow, my birthday Sunday, and my older son's birthday on the 22nd. So there's going to be a lot of cake and junk food this weekend, and that's okay. I just won't overdo it, and I'll try to get back on the balanced physical path on Monday or Tuesday. So ways you can use your sacred space, or to engage with that space. I already mentioned journaling, writing your thoughts, setting intentions, releasing emotions. All of that can be so important for clearing what is bothering you, or bringing up maybe some past traumas that need to be addressed and you haven't fully faced them yet. Writing about them can be huge, especially if you can't find somebody that you're comfortable talking to about it. If you're lucky enough to be in therapy, and I mean that, because therapy is a wonderful thing. If you're lucky enough to be in therapy, maybe you're already bringing up stuff like this. But if you're not in therapy and you're not interested in speaking to a stranger, and there's no best friends that will listen to it, journaling is huge. It's really helpful. And even if you are in therapy and even if you are talking to a friend regularly or your spouse or partner, there's nothing wrong with journaling because maybe you'll get out some stuff that you didn't get out when you were having a actual physical conversation. Again, we mentioned meditation and breath work. It doesn't have to be long. You just need to show up. Okay. And other options, you can do card pulling or divination, tarot, oracle cards, runes, some kind of tool that you think will bring you insight. Now, you don't have to be a psychic to use tarot cards. Okay. Almost all card decks come with a small book or at least a pamphlet that interprets the cards for you. Or you can just trust your feelings, trust your intuition. Now, that being said, I'm not trying to take any business away from tarot readers. I'm saying for personal use in your own quiet space, if you want to pull cards and interpret them for yourself, you go right ahead. Feel free, if that's what you do, feel free to go to a reader. Get your tarot cards read, get your palm read, whatever it might be. There's value in that too. Okay? I've done my share of readings. I've done tarot. I've never considered myself a tarot card reader, but I've done tarot before. I've done psychometry. I've done just cold readings. I've done gallery readings. I've done all that stuff. So I know that there's value there. It's not all bullshit. There are some, I guess the word is charlatans. There are some charlatans out there. There are people who speak in vagaries. And that's unfortunate because it kind of gets its own mess on the rest of us. But I can promise you that there are some legitimate energy workers out there who can really help you find out things about a past loved one, things about your life that you're just not seeing, things about the future, things about the past. There's some legit people out there. So if that's something you're interested in, absolutely, by all means, go for it. So now you've got either a physical space or your tiny space or your body space. Now you need to create a routine or even like a little ritual for yourself. It doesn't have to be rigid. It just needs to be consistent. So you could do mornings or evenings, it doesn't matter. Take 5 minutes of deep breathing. Sipping your tea mindfully now. I drink really good teas because I had to give up caffeine not that long ago because of my heart. So I've been drinking herbal teas, and at first the missing the caffeine was tough, but once I got used to it, I really kind of went all out and started exploring flavors and textures and tastes and ways of brewing and different fun cups to put it in. So it's not an obsession by any means, but it's enjoyable. And when I do sit and have my tea, I usually pay very close attention, not just to like the mug that I'm holding or the warmth of the cup, but the flavors that I get and how they change. Because I'm one of those that leaves the tea bag in, and the intensity can grow to the point where quite often it's no longer desirable. But that's also, to me, part of the experience. It means that I'm done with my tea, typically. Sometimes a strong flavor like that can actually, help you find some balance, help you wake up, you know. Excuse me. That one's a sweet and spicy tea this morning. It's good stuff. Um, so we talked breathing, being mindful when you sip, be mindful when you do anything. Just create that routine, that ritual for yourself. Sitting for 5 minutes with a candle is always nice. You can stare directly into it. You can stare off from one side if it hurts your eyes. But any of that will eventually, if you do it enough and do it regularly and commit to it, will become a routine, will become a ritual. And you will find that you start to look forward to it. And you will find that if you miss it a day, you will actually like miss it and want to get it. And if you don't do it at your allotted time, be flexible. Do it later. It's okay. Do it twice tonight instead of once this morning and once tonight. Or say that's all right. I'm going to get back on the wagon tomorrow. One of the most common mistakes that human beings make is starting a routine and then skipping it a day or two and just giving up. Okay. So that's why New Year's resolutions almost never work, because people will, in their hearts, mean it. They really want to do it. But then they miss a day. Something happens. Life gets in the way sometimes. That's just how it fucking is. Life just shows up. I've had many times where I've sat down planning on doing a podcast, and then the weather had everybody staying home from work and school. So with the chaos in the house, I just couldn't do it. You got to be flexible, and you got to get back on the horse the next day. All right? Be flexible and allow yourself some grace. So, sacred spaces, one other thing I want to mention is that they're allowed to evolve. Okay? You may not have the perfect space currently compared to what you really want it to be, but it's okay for it to evolve. It's okay for it to shift. It's okay for it to change. You're not locked into one way of doing things. Spaces change just like we do, and that's okay. I don't know how many times my wife has said to me, I am done with this crystal. I don't know why, but Spirit is telling me that I don't need this crystal anymore, and she gives it away. Or a certain book that she's read many times, or another kind of symbolic artifact where she just says, I'm done now. I need to let it go. She's done this with a lot of things since I met her over the last 10 years. Remember that every single season of life may call for a different sacred energy. So, and when I say season of life, we can be referring to the 4 seasons, but also the seasons of your own life. Depending on how old you are right now, you've got a certain way about you, a certain lifestyle that is comfortable for you. But 5 years from now or 10 years from now, it's not going to be the same. It's just not. So be okay with your sacred space changing when you feel like it should. When you feel, I've got my sacred space and it's right the way I want it, but then a year later, there's something off about it. Clear it out and start over. That's fine too. It's okay for things to change like that. And then encourage others in your home to try it for themselves, but at the very least, to give you the honor and respect to do it for you, because doing it for you will benefit them in the long run. I want to encourage you to actually listen to your space and then adjust as needed. So that's about it for today. I'll recap. Remember that sacred spaces aren't about perfection. They're about intention, okay? Whether that's a physical one or an internal one. Doesn't have to be perfect. I want to encourage all of you to start small and then build from there. If you've got the ability to create an entire space and an entire room, have fun. It's not everybody that has a meditation room in their house, though with the crowd of people that I know well or hang out with, quite a few of them do. Um, I would love personally to hear from you. Um, this is only my fourth podcast, and while it's not viral by any means, or well, let's just say I had no expectations of how many were going to listen, how long it would take for more to listen, how many would even be interested, how many would share it. And honestly, I've been pleasantly surprised. And surprised is a key word. Like, this goes out on iHeartRadio, and apparently that's my customer base, because that's now over 35% of my downloads. But people are listening to it on Apple, and people are listening to it on Amazon Music, and people are listening to it on Spotify, and one or two other podcast channels. People are also watching it on YouTube and following the clips that I leave on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So I want to hear more from you. I really would love it if you would take a moment, sit with it, and say, what do I want to say to Yahweh? And then shoot me an email, okay? alignedafpodcast@gmail.com. And again, it'll be on the outro. It'll be written out for you if you need to pause it and write it down. But it's really simple. alignedafpodcast@gmail.com. I want you to reach out to me. Leave comments if you watch it on YouTube. A couple of the podcast channels allow you to shoot a text or leave a comment. Please do. I want to hear your success stories. I want your questions. I promise you, I may not respond in 5 minutes or 5 hours, but I will respond. I promise you that. Every email I get, I will respond to in some way. Okay? I want to interact with all of you, and I want your ideas. What can I do better? What can I do differently? Maybe I shouldn't talk as long. I don't have any idea. Telling me not to talk is difficult, though. Kind of why I'm here. I would love to hear from you. I would love it if you would share this with somebody who might want to hear it, who thinks like you, or who maybe doesn't think like you and is open to it, or who doesn't think like you and isn't open to it at all, but you think they need it. That's fine. You can't force anybody into anything. We're the water, you can't make the horse drink, but share it with the horse. So if you could please share this, that would be fantastic. And please come back. My next podcast is going to be an interview, and it's going to be with my wife, Alara Kent. And we're going to talk about spirituality and relationships, and what's awesome about it and what's challenging about it. So I look forward to that. And then I've got another one coming up I'll be doing with Orion, my soon-to-be 8-year-old. And he and I will be discussing the spiritual side of Minecraft. He's looking forward to that, and so am I. Yeah. And then I've got several other people kind of lined up. I've been talking with a young woman, Maddie Rivera. And we're going to be talking about grief and spirituality and how the two work together to help you. That will be coming in the weeks ahead. And again, there's all kinds of people that have agreed to come on or asked me if they could. And I'm looking forward to whatever this turns into. So in the meantime, thanks again for hanging out with me. Thanks again for coming back if you've heard one of my podcasts before. Thanks for stopping for the first time, if that's what you did today. Please remember that the disclaimer part is Everything that I talk about here is based on my own personal experience and my own personal opinions. I have gotten information from lots of reliable sources. I don't just spew stuff out for the sake of hearing my own voice. I literally want only the truth to come out. And it's not just the truth as I see it. I do research and make sure what I'm talking about is legit. That being said, I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health professional. So if you feel you need help, please get professional help. If there's anything in my podcast that resonates with you, please feel free to use the tools. Please feel free to reach out to me to see if maybe there are more tools available, because I promise you there are. Some of the services I offer, aside from just a free podcast, is I do truth coaching, which is similar to life coaching, but it digs a little bit deeper into some of what we see as our truths and what our truths actually are, and how that can help us in our day-to-day existence. I also offer Metatron cube attunements, or installations, I guess is what we're calling them now. Energetic protection, for lots of reasons. Some of it's physical, some of it's emotional, some of it's spiritual. And if you have questions about that, there will be more on my soon to be finished website. Or you can reach out to me if you've got questions about it, and I can share whatever information I have at this point. So, again, thank you. I love you all. You're awesome. I'm awesome. Let's be awesome together. And remember that even when it's messy, you're getting closer to aligned AF every single day. Peace. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. If this episode spoke to you at all, share it with a friend or someone who needs it. You can also leave a review or connect with me online. You can find Aligned AF on YouTube, Facebook, your favorite podcast channel, or at alignedaf.org. And if you want to reach out directly, you can email me at alignedafpodcast@gmail.com. So until next time, stay aligned AF.